Hey good people, Batavia here. Welcome to my garden and welcome back if you've been here before. I garden in Chicago, Illinois. We are in my front yard where I grow all things, vegetables, herbs. We toss in a few fruit every now and again. I also garden in the backyard. That's where I originally became a gardener so many years ago. So I want to share with y'all what we're growing now and then some of the plans I have as the season progresses. Quick housekeeping items. Big thank yous to those who like, watch, comment, share, and subscribe to Be Better Garden. I appreciate y'all. If you haven't subscribed already, consider it. I am also over on Instagram and Facebook if you're on either of those platforms. And then I do co-host the Backyard Gardens podcast with my buddy Ben. We release new episodes, all things gardening, every Thursday. You can check us out here on YouTube under Backyard Gardens or anywhere you listen to podcasts. All right, let's dig in. Okie doke, so the front yard garden makes 7 years old this year and the footprint of it is about the same. I've added to some nooks and crannies here, but generally speaking, the layout, I have only so much space, so the layout is about the same. We're going to start over here in the very first bed. When you walk into the yard, I use this black netting. A neighbor asked me about this because I love it. And I have things like squirrels, primarily the cats that kind of make a home in the beds, some of them. So I don't cover everything, but some of the spaces that work out, I can access them easily with things like netting, I'll take advantage of. But for this space I have, let's see, there we go. So I have some transplants for romaine lettuce that I put in. Started those by seed. I'm still trying to get my timing right for that. I wish I would have started them a little bit earlier and planted them out a little bit earlier, but that's kind of always my MO. I also have carrots that you can see that have come up. So we're just at the beginning of them growing. Behind it is sweet peas, green peas, edible. And then I have some volunteers for sunflowers that I'm not sure if I'm going to let grow. They actually look as if I even planted them based on how they're organized, but I didn't. The intention would be for the peas to grow up this wired trellis that I have back here, and then they'll finish out in early summer, and then I'll end up, I believe it's peppers that come in behind it, which would basically fill the space of the lettuce once it's done producing, and carrots would be in the garden since it's up against the edge of the bed a while longer. So I do a mixture of raised beds and containers. You'll see them all throughout the garden. More sweet peas here. The largest bed in the garden is going to be these two, this one and the one on the other side. So I have broccoli here. This is the broccoli, the first 6 plants that I started by seed, and then started them indoors some time back, and then I picked up 6 transplants, and they're different varieties, different sizes, and I'm anticipating these will produce broccoli first. I'll come in with some pepper plants behind it, and then these will produce a little bit later. I'm against the clock when it comes to broccoli, it producing before it starts to bolt because we're heading into summer, but I'm hopeful. And then I have just some lettuce starts that I put in, some red lettuce, kind of for color, but also to play around with. This bed basically is going to have these plants initially growing tall, a little bit wide, but not so much. So I want to have something that's kind of hovering around the ground that's edible. And then on the inside, so think in between the broccoli plants, I'll do some direct sowing of things that can climb the trellis. My intention is going to be cucumbers on this side, and then we'll probably put a couple of melon plants in as well. A mixture of direct sowing and then transplanting things in. I have some beat 'em back sticks, is one of my great aunts told me I need all throughout the garden. So this small space, it's unique in that the bed really fit right into this little nook for the front porch. But it's a little bit more challenging because it is shaded by the front porch, right? So I've typically planted things that get height on them because basically once the sun starts to come up in the morning, the sun can catch the space and help grow the plants. This year I'm doing cabbage, red cabbage here, and I think I'm gonna do right here and then maybe in that corner, using one of my tomato cages, I'm gonna grow eggplant. So I have some starts in the basement that I've been nurturing. This one is so pretty. I have some peppermint Swiss chard, a couple of red lettuce plants, beautiful color red. The camera will never do it justice. I'm gonna actually make a note to myself to make sure I start some of those particular variety for fall again. Kohlrabi in the back. And then I have these fire pits. So I used to have 4 fire pits. One here, one back there, second one or a third one back there, and then the fourth one here. And so I wanted to maximize the space that's back here on this wall. So I basically used some landscape timbers and created like an 8-foot by 3-ish foot bed. But I also was able to repurpose the extra fire pits and stack them. And so I've grown potatoes here, and it's been nice because I've been able to use things like straw to cover the potatoes, and I still have like basically that pure soil that's down there. Arugula here this year, which is going to be just for spring. Some volunteer lettuce, which is beautiful. I'm pretty sure that's the marble of 4 seasons, which I really enjoy. I'm going to be harvesting some of those as baby leaves. And then there's one mustard volunteer, or 2 it looks like. And then I have over here shallots. Never grown them before. Got the actual, I guess, seed shallots and planted them along with my garlic this year. At the very end of December. They look wonderful. I think next up it's going to be fertilizing. I do want to talk just a quick moment because this space back here is to be determined. I had all intentions on coming back in and putting more asparagus because I have a few plants that took from a few years ago, but they just do so poorly. And I think it's either the soil probably doesn't have the right nutrients in it, or the porch really creates a lot of shade. This space this time of year doesn't start to get sun until 11 or 12, and then it's only a handful of hours. So I just don't know if I want to commit to asparagus again, kind of the wait for it in this space. Now this space will grow all other kinds of things just fine. Tomatoes, I've done okra back there. So think about things that get really tall, that have the benefit of all of the sun that you get in the summer. So I'm torn. I think I may spare a couple of spaces in the cage baby in the backyard garden to put a few asparagus crowns. We'll see though. I'm going to be making a decision any day now. So this is one of the garlic plantings for this season. There's another in the backyard garden. And I think it's dill here and cilantro here. And I'm not optimistic about either at this point. I'm crossing fingers and toes. The great thing about this space and containers, I could easily put in another transplant of anything. I could do a squash here, I could do pepper plants here if these things that I've direct sowed don't work out. Good morning. Are we pretty? Hi. Oh, such a good girl.
She's only 5 months.
Oh, well, happy Mama's Day. This is one of the spaces I've been so excited about, going a few years back. I thought I could just take advantage of one more growing space, and it's been a challenge, but each year I try a little bit harder and we get a little bit more out of it. Now I'm looking here. This is definitely some level of digging that happened here. I can't quite see it. So this space, if everything goes well, we'll have this lettuce that's getting a little bit of shade, which is okay based on the grow bags here. So we have the lettuce, and we're going to do something that's going to climb the trellis. So we may do, again, cucumbers or melons on this side because we have other plans for our pole beans. So I have 7-gallon grow bags here. This is my first time using this space for this. And then I have one 10-gallon grow bag on the end. And so I have some onions that I put in a few weeks ago, and then we're going to do a mixture of things. I'm thinking primarily peppers in this space, but we'll see. I have some other ideas about some summer crops. We may mix in a couple of herbs, but remember, whatever we're growing under this trellis, it's going to get shaded if all things go well when it comes to summer plants growing. So that could be a pro or a con. So this space is another little carve out. So this is like 16 feet by just barely 1 foot of space. Last year we did cucumbers. I have more of this beautiful volunteer lettuce. My plan is to do pole beans in this space. So I'm just waiting for it to get a little bit warmer, and then they'll climb this galvanized wire that I've basically zip tied to the fence. So that's the plan for this space. It's not the easiest to navigate in and out of, but I think it's going to work for the purpose, because I could also, as they grow, harvest from the other side, from the sidewalk, as we did last year with the cucumbers. All right, so let's get to the backyard. Oh, I almost forgot before we go back there. This bed is not just dirt, we have potatoes underneath. So I have russet potatoes in the first section, then either red potatoes and Yukon Gold, or vice versa. So I separated them with the intention of really giving potatoes their just due. I grow them in various small cutout spaces. Like I mentioned, I've grown them in this space before. I have some in some containers, which I basically have done every year. I've grown potatoes. Oh, that was one of the plans. I was going to do at least one set of potatoes here, which is kind of getting late in the season for me to be planting potatoes, but it's worked out for me in the past. One more container of sweet peas, and I can see here that something or someone, well, something has been digging in there. Okay, doke, so the backyard garden, which is in a bit of chaos now. I've uncovered one of my favorite set of beds over here so we can take a look inside. But this is a good example of the very original space I planted in was along this fence line. So this is the cage baby. It's a wooden cage that runs about 30 feet by 4 feet. But this space that was originally just dirt when I first moved in, that's what my first garden was made up of. And so since then, I have expanded quite a bit, using almost all of the patio for growing purposes. And of course, we've already talked about expanding to the front yard. So a little bit of chaos, but a lot of growing. My favorite spaces would be these 2 sets of beds. I think it's a combination of how much or how little sun it gets. It's right along the wood fence, and so it gets just a sprinkling of morning sun, and so then they'll start to get sunnier or more sun as the day progresses. But these are some great growing spaces for what I grow. I've done tomatoes here in the last couple of years. My greens always do well, so we think we have collards here. I direct sowed by seed, and originally they weren't looking like collards, and I'm still kind of on the fence. But I also came back in and direct sowed more collards. So where the white labels are is where I direct sowed another set of collards, Georgia collards in both of those cases. I did some turnips in containers here. I did another set where the white labels are. That's top bunch collards. They grow pretty tall. My intention was maybe to transplant once the ones with the white tags come up into the spaces where I intend to grow collards, but now I'm not sure. Now I just may leave something like the top bunch collards in the space that they're in, because these cabbage are going to grow wide, but they're eventually going to come out of the garden. So I have red cabbage transplants that I picked up, and then your regular green cabbage back there. And then again, here are a couple more beginnings of collard green plants again. I can always find a space for them. So let's talk what I plan on doing, not what I've done yet. So we have some celery here in a container. Last year we did all herbs. This is just milk crates, and then PVC plywood on top of it that I spray painted black, that I may come back in and spray paint again for the season, I'm not sure. And then the buckets, which 5-gallon buckets, maybe there's 1 4-gallon. My peppers do wonderful in this space against this wall. Remember what I said about the sun when it comes to the 2 beds here. So it's not even the sunniest spot, but they really produce well. So newer additions. This VEGO Garden bed is, I think this is the 3rd season that I've had it in this space. I put it in place pretty late in the growing year, 2 years ago, but I've been able to really play around with over the last couple of years what I feel like will do well in this space. One of my good garden friends and good girlfriends, the Purple Thumb gardener, did potatoes in this space this year in a bed that has a similar size, and that's such a good idea. If I could get potatoes in earlier this season, I'm going to do the same thing. Maybe not next year, maybe next year, maybe the year after that, we'll see. I have the white covering here because of the cabbage butterfly, which I've already seen weeks and weeks ago, and I have some brassicas in here. So more red lettuce, some kale. I was fortunate, I was able to get kale and broccoli started in the brassica family indoors. I've struggled with just the environment, I guess, the humidity, I'm not sure, but the plants don't often make it outside. So that's why you'll see me picking up transplants often. Most everything else I can start from seed indoors, but brassicas continue to give me a trouble. This is kohlrabi, some starts I picked up, and then I have some red onions that I think are going to be super cool here. So if we think about this space, lettuce and kohlrabi will basically come out of the space at a certain point. Think 6 weeks at the most, probably. Kale can stay in my Chicago garden all throughout the year. So through summer, where it kind of slows down from growing and it picks back up in the fall. So we'll see if I want to keep the kale here. These leaves are absolutely sizable enough to harvest. I normally use cut and come again for like all of my leafy greens, where I'll just harvest the outer leaves and let the plant continue to grow from the center. Once the kohlrabi comes out, is to do bush beans here. So we'll see. It'll be interesting because if I leave the kale, bush beans are something that you're harvesting pretty frequently, and I want to be careful about the opening and closing of the actual covering that I'm using. So this space I'm really pleased with so far this year. I have played around with a couple of the green stalks that I have. If I look out for my kitchen, this is one of the things that I can see, and I'm thinking flowers here. I'm thinking in particular petunias, which is something I plant every year, something my grandmother planted every year. And while they're a bit of work with the deadheading, it always reminds me of her. And so I can see them in this space. So I'm always tempted to grow food in a space where I could grow flowers, although flowers are my first love, but that would be a sight. If you are interested, you can use my code BETTA, B-E-T-T-A. You end up getting $10 off if you purchase $75 or more. This little bitty 4 by 2 foot space, I've done a bunch of different things over the years, including, pole beans. I put up a makeshift trellis here, grown pole beans there. Okra will be really good, although I do have this set up here. I did arugula last year. I've done Armenian cucumbers. I've done, pepper plants. So I have containers strategically placed because I am going to be doing more fruit. And I'm a little bit nervous about it because of the delicateness of some of the fruit that I'll be growing. We'll talk about that in the upcoming videos, but we're going to be doing berry plants. That's the intention. And so I want to show you what I'm thinking. Now that space back there, we know the whole idea of like pH for your soil for something like blueberry plants, and they're pretty sensitive. I tried to grow blueberries like 5-6 years ago. Wasn't successful. I'm willing to give it a try again. But these are my favorite containers to grow in. I think they're about 16 gallons. They're decorative, as decorative as a black container can be, but they're decorative. They're kind of sleek looking in my eye. And so I'm also planning on using something like this size. So I have a few different berry bushes that I plan on planting. Right now, these have potatoes in them, right? And so I'm thinking I could get basically 6 containers of size, right? So they be between 12 and 15, 16 gallons. I know that generally a lot of blueberries, raspberries, blackberries, they like something that's a little bit larger, but I'm going to work with what I have for now. And then I also have my green stalks here planted. So the blueberry color, which will be returning soon. We have a mixture of flowers. We have parsley, some lettuce. I have some beets in here, more lettuce, so pretty. And then pink, again, flowers at the bottom. I was kind of particular about what I planted at the bottom because this is where I know creatures basically roam. And so I'm just trying to torn between how much food I want to put down here. I have some onions down in that one, some potatoes in these levels, and then I have a mixture of some things like beets and celery at the top, which has done really well for me in the past in a green stalk. So these were just recently planted about roughly a week and a half ago, so they still have some growing to do. My main crop of onions are planted here, and so in this first bed, so think 7 feet by 4-ish feet, just under 4 feet, and the 7 feet really just comes from, this is the space that I had in my truck at the time to basically get a 14-footer and have them cut it down to 7 feet. So that's how most of these beds are that size. But I have onions, and in between onions I have carrots that have come up nicely. And I'll need to make sure I thin these once they get a little bit more size on them. So those are the yellow Spanish sweet onion. And then I have a red onion here. And in between the rows of the red onions are beets. So I have a red cylinder beet, and then I have a golden beet. And again, they've just come up, barely putting on true leaves. And so we'll have some time before they really start to show themselves and produce. Generally speaking, some of the cool weather crops like my collards and cabbage, they'll do fine, basically getting a real good start in May, heading into June. Even carrots, I feel pretty good about. I had them direct sowed at the later part of April, and so they're just not coming up. In most cases, I'd ideally like to have that kind of stuff sown in earlier April, but here we are. Things like potatoes, which again, everything says, hey, as soon as you can work the soil, you want to plant them at the beginning of the coolest part of your season. They do better when they are growing in cooler weather. I don't always get out in time for that. And generally speaking, I think that I have had some pretty good success with growing them. Things like potatoes and such. I have one more section of containers and then one more section of raised beds that have not been planted in yet. So I have this area over here, which is nice because I can still navigate. You see my little cart here. I can still navigate in and out of the backyard. And I have 20-gallon grow bags here. Oh, I've been asked about this, so I have to be careful not to show the company name. So I've scavenged these. These are the I don't know, the crates that you see my grow bags in the front yard sitting on. These are the same crates that these grow bags are sitting on. I use them. I prefer not to have the container directly on the patio. It's fine if it is, but I'm able to easily see things like water that escapes from it. I don't have as much staining on the patio, and that's something that's important to you. And then also it gives me a little bit more height and a little bit more access. So not sure what's going to go into these 20-gallon grow bags this year. I'm torn. I did potatoes last year, and I think one of two things: nutrients lacking, or maybe, again, this is a shadier spot. This little corner here is getting some sun, but the rest of these are really dependent on like midday to late day sun. All right, so let's get inside of the cage, baby. We don't have anything planted inside of it. I was shredding some leaves in the garage. I finally got through it. So I have leaves here. I have some weeds to pull. This is going to be where most of my summer plants go. So we'll have tomatoes and peppers here. I have some strawberries that some are doing well. Some of the roots that I got don't look good. So we'll see what to do about that. And this is where I'm thinking, and forgive the sun glare, I'll use some corners of the space for asparagus crowns, which again is kind of late to be planting them. So I'm thinking when I weed this bed, because it needs to be weeded, that I may do asparagus right on the edge of this space. I have a hard time committing to things that are perennial for vegetable purposes. But I also was thinking in this space, asparagus. What did I say, okra here? See, that's where I get torn. It's like, oh, this would be a great space for okra. But I also need to commit some space because I do want to grow asparagus. So I'm thinking maybe the edge of this bed. And then if I go all the way down to the other end of the cage baby, maybe a couple of the edges of those beds, which would still give me room to plant things that are more annual, vegetable-wise. But yeah, so many options. Thanks for spending some time with me. As always, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them below. Super excited about this growing season. Really happy to be back to share the garden with you all. We're going to get back on our regular schedule, so you'll see more garden content from me. And next up, we're going to be actually planting out summer plants. Well, I still have some things to do to prep for that and a few cool weather things to get into the garden. But we're going to start transitioning some of the summer plants outside to harden them off and get them planted in the garden. Look forward to seeing you all on the next one.